Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype. Mike, thank you so much. I hope you had a good holiday and appreciate you taking the time. When you dropped a crazy heater of an article on us right before we had to go to break for 4 days, but I'm appreciating you doing it, and thanks for being on.
Back at you, brother. I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving with your family as well. Yeah, I know, right before the holiday, but hey, news is news. You got to put it out when you got it.
That's right. Let's get right on into it then. Let's start here, talking to Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype. This has been a huge question among the fans of the Kings, whether or not these older guys, DeMar DeRozan, even Zach LaVine, I know Domantas Sabonis is out right now, whether or not they should be playing as much as possible or playing as much as they currently are to drive value, or is their value, it is what it is, right? Zach LaVine started out hot and has since cooled off. DeMar is kind of just steady Eddie. He's going to get you 15 to 20 a night, and it is what it is. Do you think it matters? Do you think teams are still looking and saying, hey, DeMar this season is averaging this, or they know who he is? And Zach LaVine, do you think they're paying attention to the fact that he started out hot, now he's struggling, at one point he wasn't closing? Do you think that matters to teams, or they know who they are?
Teams know who these guys are for the most part, but what I would say is that if you're going to take back their minutes and decline them, teams are going to scratch their head a little bit and say, well, if you're not playing him, why should we trade for this guy? It's a little bit of a catch-22, but most people know what these guys are at this point. And big picture, it's got to do with a lot of it is the salary cap, where they fit on their books and things like that. But it's no secret at this point, you know, Sacramento has a group of guys that they would gauge the market on. If they can move them, I think it would behoove them to do so. Currently where they are, they're certainly not meeting expectations at this point. When you look at the talent on the roster, now I know that Domantas Sabonis has been out for a while, but it's been underwhelming to this point, to say the least.
Talking to Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype. Mike, let's go DeMar DeRozan and the Clippers. Now, the Clippers were down 30 points to the Heat yesterday, and Kawhi tried to bring them back, and the Clippers are a complete disaster right now. Do you think, at first we wanted the Clippers to need help, but do you think they have entered a realm that is past fixable by DeMar DeRozan? I know there have been some conversations between, or I guess surrounding the Clippers and DeMar DeRozan, but do you think it's getting to the point where they're past a DeMar DeRozan helping them, and it could be we're either going to take a big swing or we're going to make a big fire sale? Or is it still possible that they look to a DeMar DeRozan and maybe even somebody else to try to salvage this thing?
I'll say this. The DeMar, look, I heard
you the conversation that way. Mike, do we gotcha?
Yeah, you got me, brother. Sorry about that.
No, I don't know. It's happened with other people besides you, so I wouldn't look to your side quite yet. But either way, we're happy to have you back. Appreciate you. And yeah, we lost you at the very beginning of the conversation as it pertains to DeMar DeRozan and whether or not that Clippers conversation is still hanging on.
To me, it was a little surprising to see it kind of mentioned again, just from the standpoint of the Clippers are one of the older teams in the league. And, I mean, I guess if you're looking at DeMar as a guy that can replace the scoring of Norman Powell, because Bradley Beal wasn't able to before he got hurt, and John Collins has had mixed results there, I guess. But I don't think that that's ultimately going to move the needle for them. Their defense has taken a substantial step back from last season. Also getting Brook Lopez, he's had a lot of DNPs. Chris Paul has just gotten back into the rotation now after saying he's going to have a farewell tour on a retirement. But essentially, their defense has taken a major step back, and I don't think DeMar moves the needle there. So to me, I just think, again, this is a guy that you know what he is. And you got to be a win-now team that would be maybe looking to get him if you're going to make a trade.
Talking to Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype. Michael continuing to go all the way down the line. Another person you brought up was Keon Ellis and the Pacers. Now, I thought the Pacers were interesting because clearly they are looking to get a top pick this season. They are not contending, and part of the reason you would want to grab Keon Ellis right now is because you get him on that cheap contract to end this season, and then you would go into hopefully extending him, not letting him hit free agency, and continuing on with him and his 3-and-D profile. Let me ask you this before we get to the Pacers and other teams that might be interested, as Mark Stein also said that the Kings are receiving calls. What is your take on the lack of Keon Ellis minutes? Do you think we were trying to go tinfoil hat and say maybe this is about trying to keep the asset safe? I mean, he's only playing 6 minutes, and Doug Christie is telling us every day how much defense matters. So it makes absolutely no sense. In your years of covering the NBA, is that something that actually happens? Could they be trying to protect the asset, and this could be coming from up top, or is this just Doug Christie not able to overcome a logjam? I mean, he just sat Russell Westbrook to play Nick Clifford a bit more, so he's done it, but Keon is not getting an opportunity. What's your thought on it?
I don't understand it, quite frankly. I think if you're going to sit a player that you're about to trade, it wouldn't have been for this extended period of time. Mm-hmm. That's the baffling part of it. It seems more like it's Doug's call as far as the rotation and whatnot. And if you're going to keep a guy's value up, you would think you would try to showcase him more and play him more. But nonetheless, any team that's looking to acquire him, the thought is you get his bird rights if you acquire him now before there's unrestricted free agency. So it would, in theory, give you possibly extra leverage to keep him in that regard, depending on where you are in the salary cap.
Talking to Michael Scotto of HoopsHype, getting on down the line from Michael's article. Be sure to check that out on HoopsHype.com. Domantas Sabonis, this is something that we've seen before about his usage. But, Mike, I'm looking here at the games played. He's played in 10 games. He's missed 11. They're at, 21 now. So he hasn't really been out there. I don't really know how he's had time to not be happy with his usage, because Doug Christie is his guy. That was his personal trainer, and they haven't had a lot of time together to figure this thing out. Were you surprised when you found out that he was already upset about his usage? And what's your take on it? It could be viewed as he wants to go elsewhere, or, and this is my thought process, because I think he's very comfortable out there in Napa, he's saying, hey, you guys have a large commitment to me. Some of these other guys got to go because it isn't working. What's your thoughts on it?
I would just say that the trajectory of the organization since they've made the playoffs hasn't been ideal. Obviously, losing De'Aaron Fox in the trade hurt. And if you just look at his usage in terms of playmaking as a passer, it's not what it was. Scoring's a little bit down. So those are some things that were brought to my attention by people. And again, the phrase that I had kind of been given was disappointed. I don't think that that's an earth-shatteringly crazy statement. I think if you were sunshine and rainbows with the way things are now, I'd say the opposite. I'd say that's a little weird. But I get it. I know anytime you mention something about a player sometimes because he's a star player who's been an all-NBA guy, it gets a little bit more breadth to it. But, yeah, I mean, again, just more disappointed in that sense. We'll see ultimately what they do going forward. But, that's what I had heard from several people.
Talking to Michael Scotto, senior NBA insider for HoopsHype. And another guy that got brought up is Zach LaVine. Now, we talked about just the vets in general and how Zach LaVine got off to a hot start and then cooled off, and at one point wasn't closing games, and now the Kings aren't even in close enough games to close. You brought up the Bucks. I couldn't, and I know you said it was very surface level, I couldn't really get there just because Zach LaVine makes so much money that they'd have to give up a couple different pieces. So the other approach I wanted to take on this, Mike, is it possible? I know he's a clutch guy, but is there any possibility that he maybe opts out and takes a 3-4 year deal at maybe a lesser AAV? Could that be where the Bucks make a move for him? Or are there, number one, is it malpractice for him to say no to $49 million? And number two, are there teams that if he does get hot, they would make it work? I know you brought up the Bucks, but maybe some other teams as well.
Well, I mean, I've known the Bucks have done due diligence on him now. They've done it previously the year before. Last year, there were more talks about it. So far, to my knowledge, it has been more background due diligence, and whether they were going to make another talk or not, we would see. You can get there. You maybe need a multi-team deal. Don't forget, you got teams like the Brooklyn Nets with cap space, et cetera. But big picture, if I'm Zach LaVine, I don't know how you're passing on $49 million. I don't know where you're getting that, and then you worry about the future contract later on.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I know the taxes in California aren't great, but either way, I don't see how he can do that. Talking to Michael Scotto, NBA senior insider for HoopsHype. Ja Morant is a name that has been brought up a little bit. You said it was pretty surface level, Mike, and Sam Amick just put out an article that was Ja Morant focused and also brought up the Kings. Just your opinion, what would be the thought process? I mean, Mike, it seems like the Kings are just going to try out every point guard that has played in the NBA over the last 10 years here. You got Dennis Schroeder. You have Russell Westbrook, or was that timing with Ja before acquiring them? What can you tell us about the Ja Morant interest?
No, I mean, listen, if you can get Ja Morant's a substantial upgrade over both of those guys, and Ja Morant is 26. So the thought is, if this is a guy that, if you can get a guy like him, given that they kind of want to go more towards developing younger guys, it would fit that realm. However, this is for every team around the league that has looked at Ja Morant. The past 2 seasons, his drives and field goal percentage at the rim are substantially down over the past 2 years. It's a downward trajectory that's got some people concerned, because that's what made him an elite point guard in the NBA and thrive as a guy that was an all-star and even bigger than that to some people at the time. He's got a sizable contract still now. So if you're trading for that, you're going to want to see the guy that had been driving effectively, doing 360 alley-oops, making people around him better. Obviously, at the start of the year, his encounter with his head coach, Tomas, wasn't exactly ideal, and they got suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. So if your Memphis' value isn't where you want it to be, teams are going to certainly look to try to strike and have a buy low opportunity if they can. But as I had reported, Zach Kleiman has kind of rebuffed those conversations, knowing that the market for him is not where he would want it to be. And he has said that, they have all those picks from the Desmond Bane trade, and it gives them the flexibility that they can do one of two things. They can use those picks to go get another star type of player, and they have younger guys that are valued around the league. Or two, eventually you can say, well, maybe the Jaren Jackson era didn't pan out, and they can pivot. That determination hasn't been made yet, it seems, for now. They still want to keep those guys, try to get healthy, see more what they have, which they have not been able to do to this point. Ja himself has also been hurt and is hurt now. So, a lot of stuff to be determined. But I understood why Sacramento made the call. I understood why the Minnesota Timberwolves made the call when you got Anthony Edwards and, you're trying to contend in the West, and they have a hole at point guard, quite frankly. Dante DiVincenzo has been serviceable, and, Mike Conley's towards the latter stages of his career. So it made logical sense to me. You've got to do your due diligence, as these teams did. But to this point right now, nothing's imminent.
Michael Scotto, one more for you, and then we'll let you get back to it. NBA senior insider for HoopsHype. I was thinking about this last night, Michael, and as the Clippers are maybe imploding, and we already know the Mavs are going to sell, and Kings fans aren't going to want to hear this, is there a world where you look around, Ja Morant, Zion's always on the table, Trae Young could be on the table with how the Hawks are playing. Is there a world where there are too many options for contenders and the Kings have a problem moving their guys because there's just a lot on the buffet table and I don't need to grab a DeMar DeRozan for lunch or a Zach LaVine for dinner or even a Malik Monk? Is there a world where if too many teams go the selling direction, it could harm the Kings' plans to move off of some of these guys? Or am I way off base here?
I think you make a valid point, but I would also say before the Kings got Zach LaVine, I don't know how many people were banging down the door of the Chicago Bulls for Zach, mainly because of his high salary. Mm-hmm. Again, we're in an era where teams don't always want to pay the first apron, let alone the second apron, and some teams shy away from the luxury tax completely. Clearly, we saw how that had an effect on the Miles Turner situation, and they could have said, well, okay, they would have kept him and then been in the tax, but who's to say they wouldn't have gone out of it, given the history of the franchise? Mm-hmm. So when you have the CBA, you have, as you mentioned, there's a million point guards that people are monitoring on the market, whether it is Trae Young, whether it is Ja Morant, whether it is LaMelo Ball. Mm-hmm. And you've got, you touched on Zion. Yeah, these are guys that people wonder, hey, maybe can we buy low on? And it's almost why like Desmond Bane going for 4 first-round picks was kind of a needle-moving point. And people wonder, well, how did Rudy Gobert go for all those picks? It's like, when you got a guy that's more in demand, teams are going to overpay a little bit, and also out of desperation. Like Orlando, there's a little bit of a push there that, okay, you've had enough time to rebuild. You can kind of know what this team is. They need to take that next step. How are they going to get there? He was the best shooter that they can get to fill a gaping hole that they had. With the sense of urgency, they said, forget the picks. Now's the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, and he's played great lately. So now, if you're the Kings, again, Domantas Sabonis has a lot of money coming to him in the years ahead. Not an elite rim protector, certainly. He does a lot of things well, but there are some drawbacks with him, even though he's been an all-star and an all-NBA guy. DeMar, if you're going to trade for him, he's got $10 million guaranteed next year.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with that? And if you're cutting him, you still got to pay him that money. And Zach, with that huge player option, he controls his destiny, not the team that would be trading for him. He controls it. So they're fighting a little bit of an uphill battle, in my opinion, in that regard. With that said, in a year from now, if those guys are theoretically still on the team, then you look at it differently. It's an expiring contract. And it's amazing how the pendulum swings the opposite way when it's the final year of a deal for somebody. Then all of a sudden, the guys who could never be traded all of a sudden become assets.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Michael Scotto, this is why we have you on, Mike. We appreciate it. I said before, you're the one guy that I can't complain. It's been a little chilly out here in Sacramento, and I had my time in Philly, but you're the one guy I can't complain about because I know out there in New York it's starting to get a bit brisk out there, I should say. So stay warm. I know you're used to it, and the holidays are coming, so you're going to light the big tree and do what the New Yorkers do. So we appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you're running around busy.
Yeah, no, I'm not. You got a tough life. Somebody's got to absorb that heat. But I'm going down to Orlando for the G League showcase for a couple of days and keep an eye on some trade talks and what could be coming ahead. But I'm hopeful for some 70 degrees weather and some intriguing chatter. So I'm sure we'll do it again, brother. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad you had a great holiday. and we'll talk soon, my man.
Same to you, my guy. Yeah, enjoy Orlando, and we will talk to you soon. Michael Scotto, be sure to check him out on HoopsHype.com and follow him on social media if you want to stay up to date on all things NBA trade buzz. We'll talk to you again, my man. Thank you.
Later, brother.
That was Michael Scotto. We are way over our time, but you know what? Dang it, it was worth it.